deleted my shape. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the shape underneath. And so we're left with our strokes. And so you'll also notice with the strokes, if we were to leave them in a stroke, which could look kind of neat, you notice how you have this really kind of sharp pointed edges at the top. I don't like that at all. So we're going to go to our stroke panel. I'm going to highlight our shape. Go to our stroke panel, and I'll zoom in so you can take a look. I'll bring my stroke panel out. And I am going to do a rounded join on the corner. And so you'll notice it kind of eliminates that extra sharp edge. So we could just go ahead and select all, and then add that rounded corner. So we could change the color and make this like a light gray. And we have kind of a neat shape there. So we'll go ahead and leave it that way. I think that's kind of neat. We can always flip it to stroke or to fill, and we can kind of select every other one. So I'm just holding down shift and selecting the objects I like. And I could do like a little bit of a lighter color to kind of give it a cool 3D effect. So I just clicked every other one, held down shift, and changed the color right here in the fill. So there's our next shape. So now we have 3 shapes down. Let's go ahead and get our stroke panel back over here. Let's do our next shape. We're still not doing curves on this one, so this should be quick. So let's do this one quickly. Let's grab the shape tool or the pen tool. Go ahead and flip that to stroke so I can see my strokes. I'm just going to go ahead and do a rounded corner so I can go ahead and have those nice and rounded already. So I'm just tracing, making kind of a series of triangles. And this is how I'm going to kind of do a shortcut. So I'm going to select all 3 of these shapes, this is what I just created. I'm going to copy and paste it. I'm going to rotate it. So I'm going to go over here to rotate. I'm going to rotate this guy until he's over here. It's the same shape repeated, so any way we could streamline and speed up our design process, the better. Alright, so let's delete our original shape. And so we could probably clean up these lines a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of shift it down until I have them lined up a little better. You know, when you trace it, it's not always exact. Of course, there's smart guides, which I'll get to here shortly, that'll help you snap to certain points and make it easier. There's our shape. We can switch, make that a fill, and we can kind of see our empty gaps here. We just take our pen tool, our direct selection tool, and just kind of make some adjustments and make sure it has a nice flushed look. We can make just some adjustments here. All right, so now we could do maybe an every other one type situation. So let's select this one, and this one. That's every other one. I'm just going to do slightly lighter. And there's our little shape. Of course, you can make it fun colors if you'd like. But let's move on. This is going to be a challenge. It doesn't look like it'd be very hard, but there's a lot of little curves here that we have to work with. So anything to speed up our workflow. So here's one thing we can do. I see a lot of circles here. So let's just take our shapes tool. It's already done for us. Hold down shift. We already have our circle here done. We don't have to sit there and do the pen tool with the circle, which can be actually harder than you think. You can copy and paste that, or you could do the little hold down the Alt key and drag and create a bunch of versions too of the same size. But this looks to be a slightly smaller size. So let me hold down shift so I can adjust that circle. I'm just going to keep copying and pasting, creating these curves. So why sit there and trace curves with a pen tool when you already have these curves done for you in the circle? So now what we do is we need to create this in-between connection. So this is where we are going to have to use our pen tool. So you're going to just click down here and click here, and I'm just going to hold down and go ahead and create our curve. Actually, I'm going to create it a little bit higher. There we go. This is why it's nice to have the stroke on, because you're not going to see that inside when it becomes a solid shape. All right. And I believe we could just copy and paste the shape. Oops. Select our little shape we just created. And we can rotate this. If I want to rotate it exactly 90 degrees, you can rotate it manually, or you can go to Object and transform, and you'll be able to rotate it perfectly. So I want to rotate it at 90 degrees. Okay, so 90, click, and I rotated. Now I can drag it down to this shape, and it should be the same shape, although it's off a little bit. That's okay. They didn't do it perfectly with this logo, but that is okay. So I'm going to click here, and see this little handle? It's really hard to see with that orange. Really, really hard to see. You see the handle here? I'm just going to adjust that up to get the curve right. Same thing over here. I'm going to shift this over here and see if I can find, there's my handle. It's really hard to see. You can see it right there. I'm just going to adjust that. All right, so let's switch all these to a fill so we can kind of see what our final shape looks like. So we have 3 circles and we have our 2 connection points. And let's go ahead and switch all those to a fill. And let's go ahead and group them together, because right now it's all separate little elements. So let's go ahead and select all of them, right click and group. And now we have a grouping, and let's go ahead and sample this beautiful gradient color. So we're just going to do the eyedropper tool, and you'll notice it'll do it for each shape. Instead of doing one nice smooth line, it'll repeat the gradient for each shape. So one way around this, and we'll get to gradients a little bit later, but go ahead and select your shape and grab that gradient tool, which is going to be right down here. I'm going to click and hold, and you're able to apply the gradient. Okay, so now I notice kind of some little inconsistencies, which I can easily kind of figure out. So I'm just going to shift these things around, get the right shape using those handles. If I need to add an anchor point to add more precision, I can do that. And also the shape builder tool is a really cool tool, which we're going to get to a little bit later. And it's how we can combine these objects into one object instead of having all these separate little objects. I'll show you a demonstration, but we'll do more in depth later. Let's see. I don't think there's the shape builder tool. Good. It's on the layout version. So go ahead and click on the shape builder tool, which is right above the gradient tool right here. And what I can do is I can select all my objects. It's one big group now, right? So we selected all of our objects. Then we click on the shape builder tool. And you notice how when I hover over, it'll select certain objects. I'm just going to click and hold and just collect all of these objects into one shape. And it looks like I need to connect that little object. So now this is, instead of having 3 circles and 2 connection points, I now have one solid shape. So now I can come in here, and let's say I don't need that anchor point. It's like an extra anchor point that somehow got there. You could, just like you can add anchor points, you can delete them as well. If you hold down the pen tool, go to delete an anchor point, and let's say that's a redundant anchor point. It's causing kind of a strange kind of bend there. I'm going to remove that one, or let's see what happens if I remove that one. There we go. Now I can get my direct selection tool and kind of mess around with it a little bit more to get the right shape. Same thing down here. Let's see what we got. I could probably just shift that around. Okay. So it's not perfect, but I think it's pretty good for now. We could spend another 20 minutes just fine-tuning those lines. But that is just one way to trace this logo or to create a logo like this. There's so many different ways you can tackle it. So I'm going to select the object below. So we have different layers here. So just like in Photoshop, you have a layering system. So if you switch over to layers, it works just like Photoshop, where you can drag and drop different layers on top of each other. But for this case, I want to select the object below. So I'm going to get that one and get rid of it. So I want this to be on the top. And we have that, oh, I guess that the original one also disappeared. Great. So now we have our little shape. That's what we created. There's nothing original left. Okay, so the heart. Let's go ahead and grab our pen tool and get started.